Welcome back to Indianomics. You're watching this special show on the politics of GST. Joining me now is Mr. Yashwant Sinha, the former finance minister and the finance minister who first brought in the value-added tax, which is the precursor to GST. Now, Mr. Sinha, let me just lay out what my problem is. The GST Council is the first constitutional body where all states have one vote. I mean, there's equality. In Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, the vote is based on the population of the state. Now, I wanted to know how this will affect the politics of centre-state relations. So, for instance, the centre has 33% of the votes in the council. It needs 19 out of 31 states to vote along with it to get the 75% to just bulldoze its way. Do you think the centre will, buy up some of the small states and thus just get its way on every issue?
No, it does. There is no doubt about it. I mean, the idea in the GST Council was not to hand over complete powers to the states, and the centre could not afford to be a mere bystander. Therefore, it's important for centre to retain some powers which will enable it to put the voice of sanity in the GST Council. But as far as the politics of the GST Council is concerned, let me tell you, Lata, that from my experience of working with the empowered group of state finance ministers, which I had created, as you will recall, my impression was, though we were dealing with the state VAT, that the states were more concerned with revenue loss or gain of their own state. Even the political color of the government of that state was not an issue. So we had a situation where Madhya Pradesh, which was a Congress government, would come forward and support that, and Madhya Pradesh, the other states which belong to the BJP would oppose it. So that is the way it works. This is a pure economic principle on which the debates will be based, and political complexion of the governments in the states I don't think will matter very much.
Oh yes, sir. We have seen even in the current round of GST, Gujarat and Maharashtra usually driving a hard bargain, though their government, they are in the same party as the party in the centre. I take your point on that. I want to come back to the politics of GST in a minute, sir, but let me get the most crucial issue out first, the revenue neutral rate and the standard rate. We are getting some noises from finance ministers that they want 3 rates. Do you think that would be the way forward? What would your advice be? 2 rates, 3 rates, or even more?
It is with a great deal of effort that we settled for 3 rates when I was finance minister, as far as CENVAT was concerned, central VAT. You'll recall that I created a mean rate, which was 16%. Then there was a demerit rate of 24%, and there was a merit rate of 8%. And this is the formula on which we have worked. Now, as far as GST is concerned, I personally feel that too many rates, introduction of too many rates will lead to confusion and will lead to administrative problems, will lead to litigation. A producer of every product will say, why am I in this category and why not in the lower category? And it will lead to, as I said, administrative and legal complications. So I'll very strongly recommend that there should be only 3 rates. Of course, there will be an exempt list, but there should be only 3 rates. Except, again, I'll say that if some of the states are pleading for a threshold for presumptive tax, where you will impose 1 or 2% and will not go into the details, and they will up to a certain turnover of, let's say, 50 lakhs, just deposit that rate of tax. So much will depend on discussions with the states on this, but I think it's centre's responsibility to persuade the states to accept 3 basic rates.
Okay, maybe it will be headed in that direction, though that looks like a tough bargaining. How will the tax administration pan out? Today after the GST Council, we heard that service tax is going to be collected only by the centre, but goods tax, the work is going to be shared. Will the administration be amicably divided?
This is the most important complication in the introduction of GST. How will the tax administration work on a combined basis, the central tax administration and the tax administration of the states? Who will collect what? My suggestion will be that they should fix a threshold that up to this level the states will collect, beyond that level the center will collect, and ultimately it will be a common pool and it will be distributed among the states in a manner which has already been agreed upon.
No, that's what they have agreed today. But today the states could not agree on the rate of projecting the future growth of GST. Should it be the basis of the last 5 years, the best 3 of the last 10 years, 3 median years? Do you think this will be amicably resolved?
Well, I think we already have the precedent of Government of India agreeing to compensate the states as far as VAT was concerned, and we followed the principle of average of 3 years, and we did not take the best or the worst. It was just the average of last 3 years. So you decide on a number of years over which averages will be calculated, and the compensation, if it becomes necessary, will be paid according to that. But if you take the best years out of the last 6 or the worst years, etc., that will create complications. It's very important. Let me make one point to you, Lata. It's very important that the whole thing is kept as simple as possible. Otherwise, we will lose the advantage of GST.
I take your point, but let me look at it from the centre's angle. States who earn more keep the extra money. States who lose get compensated. So centre loses anyways.
Sure, because the experience of that would suggest that despite the fact that the centre promised to compensate the states for revenue loss, it didn't amount to very much, because compliance improved, as a result of which the states ended up collecting more revenue than was the case in the past years. So it did not become too much of a burden for the Government of India, and therefore it's a destination-based tax. So states which are not destinations may tend to lose out. But we'll have to keep an eye on. I don't think we have worked it out earlier in the case of that, and that same formula should apply to GST also.
Yes, the central government is banking on that experience. What about agreeing on the standard rate itself? Now, Kerala seemed to be okay with 18 to 20%, but when we spoke to J&K, they weren't, and they thought that the producing states will be even more, obdurate. Do you think this will get resolved by November 22nd and at the lower end, at the 18-20%?
Lata, this is a mathematical calculation. How much is the combined revenue of the center and the states? And today, let's say pre-GST. And then you decide a rate or rates which will be revenue neutral. So, there will be a mean rate, obviously, and when we are talking of 16-18%, I think we are talking of the mean rate, under which most of the commodities products will fall. So, suppose you have 3 rates, then you can tweak it in such a way that you make sure that if anything, the mean rate is becoming excessive, let's say instead of 18% is becoming 20% or 22%, then you transfer some of the burden to the demerit rate of 24%. Instead of 24%, make it 30%, so that the overall package is revenue neutral.
Okay. Well, that was the suggestions we were getting from the finance ministers. But a larger political question. Federal countries, be it the United States or India, have shown a centralizing tendency. Will the GST be another factor that will end up strengthening the centre at the expense of the states?
I don't think so. In fact, it will on the other hand militate against centralization and work for a real federation. Because as we said in the beginning, the GST Council has a constitutional position, and the Council cannot be ignored. The consensus in the Council cannot be ignored, and the consensus will not be torpedoed only because the centre has 33%. So that is a very important. I mean, cooperative federalism will have to be on its best display in the GST Council. And no finance minister of India now, or any finance minister of the state, can take the constitutional arrangement for a right.
Mr. Sinha, I hope what you say is heard by the powers that be. We have seen the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha become a stalemate, see stalemate after stalemate. Let's hope the GST Council doesn't end that way. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us on Indianomics.